Today I'm going to give you my first thoughts on Marathon with the service land that they got going on this weekend. I originally had planned on doing a full review today, but with the way that the game is, I'll leave my final recommendations to when the game finally comes out. I'm still going to let you guys know whether I would recommend trying it out or not, so you might just want to stick around to the end of the video to find out. So I've put a bit of time into the Marathon Service Slam now, enough where I'm confident on giving you guys my thoughts on the way I see it shaping out, and if I think the game will be able to stand on its own when it comes out. I want to point out the obvious thing that everyone's been banging on about online, and that's the menus. I've seen a few people say it's even the worst game menus they've ever seen in a video game, and I just disagree. Right at the very beginning, I did think it was a bit overwhelming, but once I started to flick through it, I found it pretty easy to get the hang of. Now, before everyone goes crazy in the comments, I don't think the menus are good, but I just don't really find them that bad either. They're just average, and I think if they simplify it, it would be much better and easier to navigate. One thing I do want to give them props for though is the actual settings menu in the game. It's good to see a shooter game come out that's not like Call of Duty or Battlefield, where there's about 100 different settings to go through that no one's going to ever use. They only really have the basics that what you need, and I really find that a good thing. So now what do those menus come with to benefit your in-game experience? Well, we have the standard skill tree very similar to Arc Raiders, and I think Arc Raiders does it better with the way it's laid out. But the skill upgrades really do play a major part in the way you play the game, and they're really useful. You've also got an armory system where you can buy things to take into the game with you, like weapons and runner upgrades, and these become really useful for when I needed things I couldn't really find in game. On loading into the game, I suggest you look at what items you need to buy things so you know what to look for in game, because that will really help you a lot early on. You've also got contracts just like Arc Raiders, so you have objectives to do when you load into the map, with different objectives sending you into different locations. These also come with their own little character dialogue cutscenes, which are pretty interesting if you're into that kind of thing. But for me, I kind of just skip over the story in multiplayer games, but it's still a good addition, and it will help things feel fresh. Keep in mind, I don't know how long these things go for, so we'll just have to wait to see if these things can keep the game interesting long term. So now when you load into the game, you're instantly met with this game's crazy art style and look. And I know the art is subjective, and I've seen people either like or hate this game's art style online, but for me personally, I find it really unique. It actually kind of reminds me of Mirror's Edge back in the day with all the bright coloured items and blocky nature of things in the game. It's a cool art style that's different to everything else out there, and even if you don't like it, I think it does deserve at least a little bit of praise for wanting to be different. So you have 5 or 6 different runner shells to pick from, which can give you abilities from things like going invisible to deploying a heal bot or having a small thrust jump. These all seem to really fit in, and I haven't found any of them to be unbalanced so far, so that's a good thing. I will say the game could use more of these as it feels like there isn't too much variation there, and I'm sure they're going to add more of those in the game's future. There's a few things I found frustrating early on, and I know it's a pretty minor thing, but these things add up, and some are just frankly stupid. Firstly, objectives. It's hard to know if something is an objective or not because it doesn't even show up on the in-game map, which is just a sin in itself. So to be able to ping your objective, you have to find it on your screen in-game and ping it that way. And I just can't figure out how something so small like this would have been missed in production. One thing I was worried about going into this game though, being an FPS and not a third-person game, is whether or not people would be friendly or just shoot you on sight. And I was honestly right about that. Out of all the teams I've come across in game, I think there's only been about 2 that haven't shot me and my team. Most people would just shoot you on sight, and that really does take away that casual, relaxing nature that Arc Raiders is known for. And I think I understand another reason, and possibly the biggest reason why this happens. And that's because you can't really tell the difference between an NPC and a real player. I've done it myself where I've seen a player and I've accidentally shot them because I thought they were an NPC, and that caused them to shoot straight back at me. I didn't want to fight any real players in those games, and that's what happened, so it's a bit disappointing to me that you can't really distinct players from PvP to PvE. I don't really know the solution to this problem. I guess one solution could be maybe to make the enemies have a slight glow or something like that. The only reason why Arc Raiders isn't like this is because their enemies are really distinctly different from real players. For me, that's probably the biggest thing about this game holding a long-term player base, because Arc Raiders holds a long-term player base because of how casual it is, where this game just doesn't have that. So they're going to have to try and find a solution to the problem, and they're going to have to find that solution fast if they want this game to kick off when it launches. Another thing I'm worried about is the maps, and I've said it in multiple videos that if this game doesn't have enough maps, it'll die out fast. And after playing the Service Slam, I'm even more worried. I understand there's only 2 maps in the test, but even if there were 4 or 5, the maps just feel really small to me. I expected them to be bigger. Not only do they feel small, there's also nowhere near enough loot around on the map. And sometimes that feels really bad when you can't find anything useful when you've been running around for more than 10 minutes. If you go into this game without objectives and you just want to find loot, you'll be lucky to find more than a few useful items. I haven't really found any useful items. I think I've found one or two useful items the whole time I've played. I just hope the other 2 or 3 maps that they're releasing when the game comes out are a lot bigger and a lot more dense. There's a lot of open areas that feel useless in this game, and that's a bit of a problem. Another thing I don't really like, but it isn't the biggest issue to me, is the way that the armor and the health is in the game. The way you have to heal shields and health just feels a little bit uninnovative and annoying. Not the biggest deal in the world, so I won't bang on about it too much, but it is a little minor nitpick that I have. But now let's talk about some things that I liked about Marathon, because not everything was bad, and I actually am really enjoying Marathon. One thing I was surprised by were the weapons, and these all feel distinctly bungie, which is a good thing. And one thing I was super happy with was how many weapons are actually in the game. I went to the customized weapons page and was honestly shocked with how many weapons there are, and they all feel pretty different to play with. That's one thing Marathon has over Arc Raiders. The gunplay is smooth, responsive, and fun with lots of variation, but that is, of course, if you can find more weapons in the game when you're on the map. I mentioned early on the runner abilities. I really enjoyed these so far, and they all have their own impacts, but not enough to feel like they can change a game. They all have a small amount of impact to whatever they do, and the fact that they're not overpowered makes them almost feel like they are a necessity to have in this game. Another thing is the NPCs. They're tough, and I mean sometimes really tough. Me and a friend had a run-in with some NPCs that dropped in randomly from 2 dropships, and man, they were aggressive. They ran us down quick and were ruthless, and they killed all 3 of us with not much effort because we seemed to get a bit separated. It was a bit impressive to see Bungie adding NPCs that can feel dangerous at times. So you're obviously wondering now whether I would recommend playing the game or not, and what do I think of its future. Well, I'd say definitely play or at least try it out while it's free, and try and work out the menus first so you don't get overwhelmed. But if you're going in thinking it's going to be like Arc Raiders, you should probably give this one a miss. Now on to the future of the game and whether I think it's going to hold itself up. And honestly, I think it might. Firstly, they need to simplify these menus for people, and not only that, they need to make objectives during the game more obvious. If they can just keep improving the game over a short period of time, I think the people who stick around will appreciate it, and the players who come into the game later on will be more likely to stick around. I've seen a discourse online about the game, but I've also seen the opposite side where people are actually really enjoying it, so it's hard to get a gauge on what most people think when the game will actually come out. I'm expecting this one to hold its own player base. Not as much as Arc Raiders, but enough to be able to sustain itself, and I think that's all that really matters. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you on today's video. I'm currently working on my Resident Evil Requiem review, so sub to the channel if you want to see more content like that. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and leave me a comment below on what you guys think about Marathon now that people are getting their hands on it. Alright guys, I'll talk to you in the next video.